Hello, everybody. This is their thinking review questions over the pathogenesis of atherosclerosis. And then these are the slides talking about the beginning of then the bone marrow with the stem cell, all the way forming a monocyte, and how the monocyte combines with the LDL to lead to some plaque formation, foam cell formation, and then finally the fibrous cap. So the first question we had was, what happens to the plaque formation and thrombus formation on a high-fat diet? So while on a high-fat diet, what's going to end up happening is you would have an increased amount of LDLs in the blood. More LDLs in the blood would cause a more modified LDLs, because you not only would have more LDLs, but also an increase in free radicals. More modified LDLs would lead to an increase in the monocytes coming into the cell, more macrophages being formed, more cytokines being formed, and then you'll have more adhesion molecules being activated. So essentially steps 6 through 13 would continue in a cycle to bring in more and more monocytes and eventually macrophages being formed. More macrophages would lead to increase in foam cells being formed. So you'd have an increase in the amount of plaque being formed. At the same time, as more plaque is being formed, it's going to cause a decrease in the synthesis of collagen, but an increase breakdown of the fibrous cap, leading to a rupture, and finally an increase in the thrombus formation. What about weight loss? Well, weight loss is going to lead to a decrease in plaque formation and thrombus formation. Well, weight loss would actually reduce the amount of LDLs circulating in the blood, and you have less LDLs in the blood, as well as a decrease in the free radicals in the body. You would have a decrease in the amount of modified LDLs. With less modified LDLs, you'd have less monocytes entering, less macrophages being formed, and less cytokines being formed, and therefore a reduction in the adhesion molecules. Essentially, steps 6 through 13 would be reduced. Less macrophage coming in would have a reduction in the foam cells. Less foam cells would result in less plaque. With a reduction in plaque, you'd have the synthesis of the collagen from the vascular smooth muscle cells would remain. You also would have a decrease in the collagen-degrading proteinase. So more synthesis of the fibrous cap, a decrease in the breakdown of the fibrous cap, which means the fibrous cap would remain intact, and therefore a reduction in the thrombus formation. So this is an important one when you're working with clients as to, can they prevent the progression of atherosclerosis? Absolutely. With weight loss, it'll help reduce it in the way that we just talked about. What about regular aerobic exercise? Well, similar to weight loss, the same thing is going to happen. Exercise is reduced with a reduction in LDL and also free radicals. Less LDLs along with less free radicals means less modified LDLs in the intima. And then you have less monocytes entering the intima, less macrophages being formed, less cytokines, less adhesion molecules. Essentially, steps 6 through 13 would be reduced. Less macrophages being formed in the intima means less foam cells. Less foam cells means less plaque being built up. Less plaque means you're going to have a greater amount of collagen being formed, synthesized by the vascular smooth muscle cells, and a decrease in the collagen-degrading proteinases. As a result, you would have a strong fibrous cap that would not rupture, and therefore the thrombus would not occur. So you have a decrease in plaque formation and thrombus formation. What about an increase in statin intake? Well, statins, if you remember, cause a reduction in LDL. So if you have a reduction in LDL, what they're going to end up doing is not only will they reduce LDL, they also reduce inflammation in the body, therefore free radicals. So same as the other two, with exercise and weight loss, the same thing. You have a reduction in modified LDL, less monocytes able to enter the cell, less macrophages being formed, a reduction in cytokines, and a reduction in adhesion molecules. Essentially, again, steps 6 through 13 would be reduced. Less macrophages would be formed, less foam cells would be formed, less plaque would be formed. With less plaque, you'd have a decrease in the, an increase in the synthesis of the collagen, but a decrease in the breakdown of the collagen. So therefore, the fibrous cap would stay intact, a reduction in the thrombus. What about a decrease in CRP levels? Well, a CRP levels are an indication of inflammation. So that would indicate that there would be less LDLs that would be inside the cell, along with a reduction in free radicals. Therefore, again, just like the others, we'd have a reduction in modified LDLs. Essentially, steps 6 through 13 would be reduced. Less macrophages would be entering or being formed in the cell, less foam cells, less plaque being formed. If you have less plaque being formed, a reduction in the synthesis, you'd have an increase in the synthesis of the collagen of the fibrous cap, but a decrease in the breakdown. So more collagen would be made, less would be broken down, and therefore the fibrous cap would stay intact. And therefore you'd have a reduction in the thrombus. So all of these questions are real life scenarios, things that you, in terms of applicability, in terms of focusing on reducing someone's diet, their weight loss, helping exercise, a drug if they're taking it, and also a reduction in inflammation throughout the body. So make sure you have a good understanding of these. Make sure you have a good understanding of the steps from the beginning to the end as you prepare for the exam.